I'm Dan St.Yves, and for today I'm with Timothy French, who is directing a brand new show at Stage West Calgary, 80 Solid Gold. How are you doing today, Timothy?
I'm good, Dan. How are you?
Excellent. Last time we talked was by phone. Back in May of 2010, you were here for The Producers, which was something you were a little bit familiar with back at the time. You've done some work on The Producers.
I did the original Broadway version. They had a sit-down production in Toronto, and I was what was called the resident director. So Susan Stroman came in with her team to set the show on the Canadian cast, and then I was the resident director. Means that I stay on and I've learnt the show from her when it was in rehearsal, and then I stay on to creatively manage the show so that the standards of performance stay high through the run of the show. So I knew the Broadway version and Stroman's choreography cold, yeah.
And the one here was a very successful run here at Stage West as well.
Yeah, it was really fun to go back on it, and obviously, I don't want to steal from anyone's, but it really helps to have been part of and worked with the original director choreographers and understand the vision of the show and how it was created with Mel Brooks. So the style of it, I could then, take on and find my own way through it.
Since 2010, you've been pretty busy, especially in a partnership I'll talk about in a little bit. But what have you been on aside from the Stage West productions you've been involved with?
Oh, I've been all over the place. I've been doing some productions in Toronto as a choreographer, which was Carolina Change and Falsettos, 2 productions in Toronto. Title of show, Tick Tick Boom, and I think just opened about 3 weeks ago, Footloose.
Wow!
And in just outside of Toronto.
In addition to all the stuff you've done recently here, Uptown Country Girls, there's a few others. I'm forgetting them all. You've had a long run of musical reviews.
Yes, I have. Yeah, it seems to have worked out for me and my co-creator Howard to work together and to continue to create these. And so far, the audiences have really enjoyed these productions and had a good time and a good party when they're here and on those performances to hear the songs from whatever era we've chosen to focus our reviews on, or whatever style of music we've chosen to focus our reviews on.
So this one, you don't need to be too bright to get that it's going to be all about the 80s.
Yes, it's just 80s. Yes, and there's been a lot of requests over the years by a lot of people say, do an 80s review, and that doesn't mean just people that I work with. That means from the actual audiences, and so we're doing it.
So the 80s, there was still a little bit of classic rock spilling over.
Oh, yeah.
Funk, disco was kind of fading, but there was stuff coming in. So what kind of music do you guys touch on in this show?
Well, there's so, as you say, there's so many genres in the 80s and so many artists, because new artists emerged, some artists carried over from the 70s, and there's, music split into all sorts of new directions. And so in one review, we can't do them all. So we basically looked at the music and looked at what we had given our audiences over the last 2 years, which was Motown and then soul and R&B and Love Train last year. And in those reviews, we covered a lot of the black artists and we did a lot of those 80 tunes. So we decided this time around that because we've just done a lot of those artists, to focus on some of the other artists that we have, and the music that hasn't been part of the last 2 years of our rock and roll reviews. So we have, now we go into the British New Wave and the New Wave. We have Simple Minds and Police and Blondie and the Go-Go's and all of those that genre of music. We have the big power rock groups like Queen, and Journey. There's of course Elton John and Billy Joel, huge 80s personas. And there's Madonna and George Michael. There's some Cher in there. There's I'm trying to think think of some of the off the top of my head. Some of all the others. Phil Collins.
Yeah.
There's Gloria Estefan, who was huge in the '80s with her Latin-inspired dance music. So just a huge cross section of performers and songs and styles of songs.
Considering that most of that is still being played everywhere today,
it is.
There's something for everybody.
There is,
young or old.
Yes, there is. So we've got the more hard rock edge in the show, and then we've got the lighter and or quirkier kind of songs from the '80s. We actually have a set that's called the quirky '80s. Because of course the beginning of the '80s was the birth of the MTV and music video.
Yeah.
So it was and a lot of those early rock videos are kind of you look at them now and they're sort of, what has this got to do with the song at all? And they're kind of they're strange and funny and weird and don't make any sense. And so sometimes we associate, that was the beginning of associating a song with a visual rock video.
Yeah.
And so we try and sometimes bring the elements that were in the rock videos onto the stage too. If that's the way we strongly associate with that song, then we try and acknowledge that in the staging. And rather than it just being someone coming on necessarily and just singing the song, sometimes these rock videos had a huge impact in the success of the song and also how we remember the song.
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned Journey, and Journey got a whole second or third or fourth life with the success of doing some of the reinterpretations on Glee.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously there's a taste to hear that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean, it is all in the end. It is all great music. I mean, sometimes when we're listening to pop and rock music at the time, I think we can. It's fun and we listen to it and it's sort of in the soundtrack of our lives. But when you go back to it, if a decade or two later, and you have to break it down and score it and teach it and stage it, all these years later, you really have an amazing. You develop an amazing appreciation for how clever and intelligent and groundbreaking the music is or was that they were doing.
Yeah. Now, your background is choreography and you're doing more directing now. The 80s was a crazy time for dance trends because the 70s, with classic rock wasn't a great era for dance.
Except for disco.
This is true.
70s was disco.
Yeah. So how does that present itself as did you have a big hand in choreographing this show as well?
Yeah. So I try and I watch all the and luckily with YouTube now it's as a resource, but I watch from the original videos to live performances. So I want to see not only what they did in the video, if there was any movement or dance associated with the video, but I also wanted to see the band or the solo artists on stage to get a sense of how they moved when they were performing their songs live.
Yeah. And
if there was something about how they moved that I could incorporate into the movement of the people on the stage. So I try and capture a quality of how people were actually moving to the music at the time.
One of the things about these reviews, for anybody that hasn't been here to see them, is that there's so much captured that you really feel like you're back in time between the costumes and, and the sound. And one of the things I noticed coming by to interview here, the stage, the bands on the stage, and that's always so immersive to have that. Live as well.
I know. It's funny. It's always a live band here.
Yeah.
But when they're in the band room,
I
think a lot of people think that it's for some reason that it's pre-recorded music.
Yeah.
Of course, it never is. But to have the band on stage means not only is there that visceral energy and excitement coming from the music out to the audience, but for the singers themselves,
right?
They have a relationship with the band and the musicians throughout the show, and that's exciting for them, and in the end, exciting for the audience. Yeah.
So, how did you and Howard start to get this organic relationship into doing these?
It was just it's when I started doing some Stage West shows, over 10 years ago, and there had already been some reviews that they had done, and it was just it was just one of those things where I guess Howard needed somebody else to work with, because the person that he was working with, I think, was just had other work at the time. It wasn't, and so it was just the luck of having already been done some shows at Stage West and met Howard and done some things, and so we gave it a shot, and I think it was. The first main one that I think of was California Dreaming, which was all the music that came out of the California scene. Yeah. And that was sort of the first thing that we collaborated on, and through that we've developed a way of doing the shows that we like, how we like to present the music, and also how it seems like how the audience likes to receive it and enjoy it. And so through the years, then we just keep trying to find different themes or context for how do we bring other kinds of music into the next review, whether it be like I was saying, whether it be the California music scene or the Canadian rock scene, Canadian explosion, or Motown or soul or any of that stuff. And once you choose a sort of an umbrella for the music, then that brings in all sorts of different kinds of music that maybe wouldn't have been in the previous review.
So one of the things I noticed, having had a chance to see some of the cast, there's a lot of familiar faces coming back. So who chooses the cast, and how do you go about putting together the people that you want to see in there for you?
I choose the cast through auditions. Sometimes not through auditions, because it's people that I know from other reviews. But every review and has with the 60 odd songs, there's a certain style of singing that I have to find that demands a certain kind of singer.
Yeah.
And if we're going to cover a multitude of singers, we have to have voices that are strong, musically strong, but also can slip in stylistically and manipulate their voices a bit to capture the original sound.
Yeah.
And so every time we do a review, it necessitates sometimes a different kind of singer for the show, because and also, is it a lot for the men? Is it a lot of screaming high singing because it's this the big power rock stuff, or is it sort of a funkier, soulful sound that we need? And often we need a mix of voices, because we need voices to cover A, B, C, D at one man's voice, but then we need a man's voice that can sing David Bowie and and all of that stuff. And so it's a real Rubik's Cube, I guess, of finding the mix of voices that can cover all the songs that are in the show.
Well, I look forward to it. If you're into 80s music, you probably want to come down to Stage West Calgary over the next little while. Thanks so much for taking a bit of time here between shows today, Timothy. It's always great to see you.